Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jamie and this is a Dollar Tree book review, the show where I go to my local Dollar Tree, find a book, and then tell you if it's worth the dollar. Today we are going over The Swallows by Lutz, something like that. Look at that artwork, that's so pretty. Actually, that's actually really pretty. So this is my usual disclaimer. I'm going to be spoiling some aspects of this book. If this is something you are interested in or something that you have on your TBR, feel free to leave the video now. And I also want to give a bit of a trigger warning that this book is about sexual harassment. And so I'm going to be discussing sexual harassment, explicit sexual acts, and rape culture. So if you are uncomfortable with that, feel free to leave the video now. First and foremost, this book was written in 2019, but it is set in 2009. I don't know if there's a reason the author decided to set it in 2009, but just kind of keep in mind that the characters are all wearing like peak 2009 fashion and hairstyles. So I thought that was funny when I was imagining these characters. This book is set at a private boarding school in, I believe, upstate Vermont, or like the woods in Vermont or something like that. And it's a pretty small private boarding school, and there's only like 400 kids, so about 100 kids per class year. Each class year has their own group of about 10 or 11 most popular kids, which are referred to as the 10. And this boarding school has a very strict social hierarchy, and the 10 basically rule their class. If you're not part of the 10, you are not worthy of their attention. Now, all of the popular boys run a not so secret website / forum called The Dark Room, and this forum is where they post explicitly sexual photos, videos, and comments about their classmates. And behind a bunch of different firewalls and like password protections, there is a thing called the Dulcinea Awards at this school, where the boys who are part of this contest manipulate the girls into giving them blowjobs and then rating the blowjobs and posting the scores on the Dulcinea forum, basically. The thing is, the girls don't know that they are part of this contest, and so they are being talked about and rated on their sexual performances with the boys without ever knowing that they were a part of this contest. So there is this sense of like secretism within the contest. Some of the boys have gotten sloppy, and a few of the girls have found out about the contest, and they are angry. The premise of the book is that a few of the girls who have found out about the Dulcinea contest are trying to take down the dark room and expose the boys who run it, basically. And because of that, they wage all-out war between the girls and the boys of the school. There are 4 perspective chapters, which means about 4 main characters, well, 3.5 main characters. We start out following Miss Witt, or Alex Witt, who is the new teacher at the school. She's our fish out of water. She finds out about the Dulcinea Award as the reader does. So Miss Witt had to leave her old teaching position at a different boarding school under mysterious circumstances, and she's trying to keep that hidden throughout the book. Then we have Mr. Ford, who is a male teacher who has been at the school for a few years. We don't initially know how much he knows about the system at the school, but we know he knows something. And really his whole purpose in the story is to be an asshole. Then we have Gemma, who is, I would say, the main character. She is a scholarship student that has worked her way into being in the 10, and so she's found out all about this stuff, this gross stuff that's going on behind the scenes, and she is determined to take it down at any cost. And finally, we have Norman Crowley, who is an anxious, shy, nerdy boy who does not approve of the dark room or its contents, but is being bullied by the popular boys to do their bidding. And so he, as a coding genius or whatnot, is the one that has created the website, or at least keeps it protected and all the firewalls and whatnot. I don't know anything about coding, but that is what he does. And he doesn't like it, but he is being forced to do it. Miss Witt is encouraging the girls' behavior of like trying to take down the dark room, and so she is encouraging this change to the status quo, which puts her at risk. It seems that every teacher that has tried to expose the dark room before has had some sort of accusation thrown at them, usually of a sexual nature, and then they are eventually fired or leave on their own accord. And Miss Witt is trying to do what the other teachers have failed previously. She's trying to figure out why this is still going on when it is obviously morally wrong. There are some other things that are going on that are either slightly relevant to the plot, like they slightly influence the plot in some way, or they're not relevant at all and they're just like thrown in there for some reason. Mr. Ford, the male teacher, is writing a book that's like loosely based on the school, and so when it's finally published, people realize that he knows what's going on at the school and he's doing nothing to stop it or try and control it or anything. Gemma is not only a scholarship person, she is an actual orphan. She had a very rough life, and you find out that the principal is actually fostering her. He's like her legal guardian because he gave her the scholarship and wanted to give her a home at the school. They have a mentor/mentee program, and Gemma has a mentee named Linny, who is just adorable, just the best fun character. She's so cute and sweet. Linny has an adorable relationship with the coach of the school, so Coach Keith is just a great character. Linny is part of a bunch of the extracurricular activities that Coach Keith is in charge of, and so he has a very soft spot for her, and they've got a cute relationship. It's adorable. There's also somebody who keeps messing with the boys, so they mess with the showers and all of the boys get scalded while taking a shower. This person spreads poison oak, and so there is this like background threat of the shower terrace is what they're called, but the shower terrace and the boys trying to figure out who it is, and they keep pointing fingers at different girls, and it's kind of in the background, but it also affects the main plot. Also, like, everybody is fucking. Everybody is fucking. The students are fucking, the teachers are fucking. There's one teacher in particular who's fucking everybody, and it's wild. It's wild. Is this book a literary masterpiece? No. There are a lot of things I personally didn't like about this book, especially when it comes to structure and writing style, and things that I feel did not do this book a service. For example, the chapter/perspective switching structure of the book was so annoying. I don't know how best to explain it. Two characters will be in a scene together, and it's like character A's perspective chapter, and they are having a conversation with character B. And then the next chapter is character B's perspective chapter, and they start with the same conversation that happened in the last chapter, but like no new information is gained. So it's not like we needed to see that conversation in a new perspective where we revealed more information. It just was unnecessary, and it wasn't just one or two chapters that did this. It was almost every chapter that had some sort of variation of this like backtracking of the timeline, I guess. But then there would be one or two chapters that didn't do that, and they jumped forward in the timeline instead. And so it was really jarring when so many of the chapters started out by rewinding to the last conversation or like somewhere in the timeline, and then all of a sudden you jumped forward and you had no idea where you were in the timeline, and that structure was so annoying. I don't know how else to explain it, but it was almost like, you know, those sitcoms that would, you know, the characters would be in a scene and then they'd go to a commercial break, and when they came back from the commercial, they kind of redid the end of the scene so people knew exactly where they were in the conversation or what had just happened, so they didn't forget over the commercial break. But now when you watch it on Netflix, there is no commercial break, so they're just repeating the same scene slightly different, like from a slightly different angle, or like the lines are just slightly different, and so you just watch the same scene twice. Like, that's what it felt like. And I found it so annoying, especially in the beginning. It was just, oh, it was so bad. That structure, I've never seen that. I've seen things like rewinding or saying the same conversation from a different perspective, but it was always necessary, and it didn't happen every chapter. So this was just like, I don't know what the author was doing with that, but it was unnecessary. There were some bits, some like in jokes or running bits that were just like cliche at the very least, if not like fully offensive or inappropriate. For example, one of the like more cliche ones is Miss Witt's mother is an Olympic fencer, and so everyone just assumes that she can fence, and she's telling everyone throughout the book, like, I don't fence, I don't know how to fence, I swear I don't fence, I never learned, I just never wanted to, right? And then the coach Keith and her are flirting, and he throws her a fencing foil, and she catches it and immediately goes into like the perfect fencing position or whatever, and he's like, I knew it, I knew you could fence. And she's like, keep it a secret, I don't want to do it, I don't want to have to teach it or whatever. And like, you knew she could fence. You knew she could fence because of how insistent she was that she couldn't fence. So it seemed cliche. Like, that's one of the bits that were just like cliche. Like, of course it was. But then there were some other bits that were just like, I found them offensive. There's a character that just keeps talking about somebody's body, or she makes a joke of like, somebody tells them to eat bread and she's like, carbs, really? And like, we don't need the diet culture. I know you're making a statement, but we don't need it. The statement has been made many times. You didn't need to say it. So like those kind of bits and in jokes or like things, they weren't funny and they were cliche and offensive. Some of the characters' perspectives felt really superfluous and underutilized. Specifically, Finn Ford, his perspective chapters could have been taken out or rearranged so that he wasn't the perspective character, and I feel like nothing would have really changed. He did give us some insight onto the school culture or like a specific character, but he only has like a handful of chapters, and so I feel like if you wanted to make him a perspective character, you needed to do more with him. And then there were some other characters that just were completely underutilized. Rachel Rose is a student, and there are a few scenes with her that are interesting. She brings up really good debates, and then she also is like a threat to some of the other characters behind the scenes, but she didn't feel like a fully fledged character, and I would have liked to see her more if you're gonna make her like an actual threat to the conflict of the book. Same with Martha Prim. She was used more than Rachel, but I would have liked her to be like a constant threat, because at one point she just kind of disappears from the book. So if she's going to be conflict in specifically Miss Witt's life, make her more annoying. Maybe not more annoying, but give her more to do so that I can hate her as a character more. There were some moments that were not given enough time or weight to have the full impact that they probably should have had. For example, like I said, Greg, the dean of the school, is Gemma's foster dad, and during Thanksgiving break, he asks to fully adopt her so that her life will be a little bit easier when she's going to college and stuff. At that point, we hadn't been told that he was her foster dad. It was kind of backfilled that, of course, he signed some paperwork to legally be her guardian so that she could stay over breaks or whatever. We didn't know he was her full foster dad, and so her having an emotional reaction to him wanting to legally adopt her did not have any weight to us as readers, because I didn't even know that they had a relationship at all. He'd always just kind of been annoying to her before. The same with Linny. Linny is Gemma's mentee character, and Gemma keeps telling her, like, this isn't your fight, like, I need to protect you, keep you out of this so that you don't get the, retaliation, right? And Linny is fighting hard. She's like, I need to be fighting with you guys. She finally explains why she feels so deeply. It's not just because she wants to do this with Emma. It's like, this is literally part of her fight. Like, she has been harmed by the boys before. That's literally just a paragraph. I really, really wish we'd been able to sit with that information, because Linny had been a fully fledged and interesting character throughout the entire book. So if we had that time to sit and realize, oh my gosh, Linny has also been, manipulated into sexual activities with the boys, like, like that would have hit a lot harder, but it is just a paragraph and then we move on, and I'm like, no, I wanted more emotional reactions from that. The writing is not stylized. Later on in the book, there's a few more beautifully written things, a lot more metaphors, similes, things like that, which are really, really good. But the writing style as a whole is flat. Some of the characters feel like cardboard cutouts, especially at the beginning. And there is a lot of info dumping, especially at the beginning, which is really weird because Gemma info dumps and like literally speaks to the reader about what the Dulcinea contest is. Like she just sits there and explains the whole concept. And then a chapter or two later, Miss Witt goes to an ex-teacher, somebody who was accused of something or other and had to be let go, and she explains in conversation the Dulcinea contest. And that is such a better naturalistic way of explaining the system at the school and the contest and all of that. I don't know why the author felt she needed Gemma to info dump this and then give another explanation that was much better. If you started reading this book and only got like 20 to 25% of the way in and decided to give up, I completely understand why. I think that the beginning of this book does it a disservice. I understand like some people just really don't like info dumps. Some people just really can't get behind, flat writing styles. So if you gave up reading this book, I completely understand why. If you only get so far into the book, it really does feel surface level. It feels like all of the characters are quirky, not like other girls, manic pixie dream girl kind of things, and that it's like a childish explanation of misogyny. I almost gave up reading this book. I almost put it down and just never picked it back up, but I finished it and I am so glad I did, because oh my god, guys, this book is so good. Once I got over the structure, once I kind of got used to the writing style and the structure of the book, I was able to actually focus on the story. It is such a good story. This is one of the best nuanced discussions of misogyny and like a misogynistic system, a lens into sexual harassment and how it affects literally everyone around them. Some books are character-based and some books are plot-based. This is neither. This is an ideas book. This is, I have an idea, I need to get that idea out there, let me have just a debate through these characters. That is what this book is. And once you kind of sit back and realize and start engaging with the book on its own level, you start to like just focus on the debate that the characters are having, and it is such a good debate. It is such a good debate. Some of the girls that have figured out about the Dark Room and the Dulcinea Award decide to band together and work together to expose the Dark Room. Now, they work with a couple of the boys who are on the inside and also disapprove of the Dark Room shenanigans. Not even shenanigans, the Dark Room crimes. And they expose all of these horrific discussion boards that these boys have been having about their own peers, not just like their girlfriends or celebrities, which wouldn't be okay either way, but like literally every girl has something said about her by the Dark Room, and it is disgusting. This book has multiple scenes where the girls are discussing the humiliation, the shame, the confusion, and the fury that comes with sexual harassment, because it's not just, oh, this guy said something gross about me and that made me feel icky. It's like a whole mix of emotions that is so hard to actually verbalize if you've never been through it. And so to see it explained so in detail and so correctly in this book is just great. It's so great. It helps me, and I think other readers, fully understand the emotions that they go through when they experience sexual harassment. And when I say nuanced, I mean like fully nuanced. There is a debate that these two characters have. One character is fully leaning into the dark room. She is trying to win the Dulcinea Award, knows what the boys are up to, and she is leaning into it. And another character calls her out on that, and she's like, why would you do that? This isn't right. Like, these boys are using you. And the character starts talking about like sexual liberation and women using their sexuality to have control in the situation. And the other character is like, well, yeah, but it's still exploitation. And they go back and forth a little bit, and they have a very nuanced discussion, and it's still left open-ended. There's not like a correct answer given. And it really reminds me of how so many people on specifically social media, how they try and use sexual liberation as empowerment for women. And there is definitely a way to use sexual liberation to be empowering, but the ways that social media specifically and this character in this book go about it, I personally don't believe to be empowering. I feel like it's the idea of the oppressed becoming the oppressor because it benefits them. But yeah, so there's that conversation of like sexual liberation and empowerment, and how they can go hand in hand, and how they also sometimes don't, or people are using the word empowerment when it's not really. I don't know. That's just a really interesting debate, and this book touches on it. And I wanted to acknowledge that this book touches on it. It's not saying like sex is bad and girls shouldn't be having sex. It's talking about harassment, the actual harassment and the control being taken away from these women. There are several scenes in this book that talk about consent and how these girls, like, they might have consented to giving a blowjob, but they didn't really feel like they were in control. They felt like, you know, the boys were pressuring them, or the boys made them feel like they were wrong for not wanting to give a blowjob, and so then they just did it, and they didn't realize until afterward that they didn't really want to do it. And that just goes into rape culture. A lot of people's definition of rape is just like a scary man in the bushes, when that is not the limit of rape or rape culture. And this book just so clearly discusses that, and I think it's so well done. I surround myself with men that I feel safe with, and men that are, you know, of the same mindset that I am. Not intentionally, it's not like I'm looking for an echo chamber. I just happen to have really great friends. But you know, sometimes you're with, a male coworker, and you get into a cheeky little debate about rape statistics in America, and this man just talks over you to tell you that, in his opinion, coercion and pressure should not be considered rape, and then you remember that there are men out there that actually think that, and you are not safe in this society anymore. Not like that happened to me or anything. There's this like heartbreaking scene where the Miss Witt and her mom are talking to the girls, and they're like, I could understand if there was just sex all over the place, or like multiple different kinds of sexual acts happening, but it seems to be just blowjobs. Like, why just blowjobs? You know, it's so one-sided. Only the boy is getting pleasure in this situation. And the girls talk about how like it gives them more control, and that was just heartbreaking to me, because I'm of the opinion that you should have control no matter what. And so for these characters to think that they are not in control when having like full-on sex rather than just a blowjob, it was just heart-wrenching, heartbreaking to hear, and to think that there are other people who feel like that. And there's just a lot of heartbreaking scenes about like control in a sexual aspect, or the lack thereof. And there's this one girl on her scorecard. The guy made comments about liking to hold on to her ponytail, or like grab her ponytail while doing gross things. And she couldn't stop thinking about that. And so she decides to shave her head, and in a show of solidarity, the other girls also shave their head. And that scene was just very heartbreaking to watch, but also, you know, it's a show of solidarity and a sisterhood that these girls are supporting each other, and so it was also bittersweet. So the book also talks about the complex relationship that the boys have with this misogynistic system. There are two boys that the girls work with. Norman, as I mentioned, is a perspective character, and he's the shy, nerdy boy that gets bullied into protecting the coding aspect, the passwords and whatnot of the dark room. And he does not want to do this. He morally objects, but he was bullied vehemently by the boys, and he fears the repercussions if he stands up for himself, and so he just goes along with the boys' bidding, and he is extremely guilty the entire time. He doesn't benefit from the system. He doesn't find it funny. He doesn't find it arousing or anything. Like, he's not interested in the system at all, and yet he's not let off the hook. He's a bystander. He didn't go to a teacher. He didn't go to the principal. He tries to make amends for that by helping expose it, but he has such a guilty, complex, like, subconscious debate with himself of, like, is he doing this because it's the right thing to do, or because he likes a girl, or things like that. And then there's Jonah. Jonah is part of the 10, but he's also in love with Gemma. And so Jonah was part of the dark room. He didn't post on it. He didn't comment on anything, but he did have access to it. And because he likes Gemma so much and he wants Gemma to feel safe and happy, he helps expose his friends. But Gemma points out that these were his friends. At one point, she says that he wears the uniform of her enemy because he was in those groups. He is not let off the hook just because he is on her side now. He still was part of that system, and he benefited from it because he had that social hierarchy standing, because he was part of the 10 and a part of the dark room. He definitely could have turned his boys in, his friends in. He could have gone to teachers, but he didn't, and because of that, he is complicit in this system, even though he does not want to be. He is, and that just shows the complex relationship that men have. There are so many men who don't like misogyny. They would rather not be a part of a misogynistic system, but they benefit from it, and whether they realize it or not, they're complicit in it. You have so many men who talk about growing up, they never saw anything wrong with the comments that their dads made about younger women or the sports teams, and how they would talk about the girls in their school, until they got older and they realized, oh, that was not good. But they were a bystander, and so intentionally or not, they are complicit in the system. And this book does a wonderful job explaining that. There's also Mr. Ford, who is supposed to represent the grown-up version of that, the just asshole man that sleeps with everyone. A few of the female characters are fully sobbing in front of him. They're a little bit drunk, and all he can think about is how he wants to fuck them. And that is all his chapters are. It's just him saying he wants to fuck various women, and it's disgusting, but it's also a good representation of those older men. I do think it's a bit of a caricature, but it's people know a man like that, and it's gross. Ford also knew enough about the system. He is also a bystander, and he didn't want to lose his job because, like I mentioned, every teacher that had tried to say something had an accusation thrown at them, and they were let go, and he didn't want to lose his job, and so he just let it go on, even though as an adult it is his responsibility to protect, well, as an adult and a teacher, it is his legitimate responsibility to protect the children that he's caring for, and yet he failed to do that. The girls' army was based on a mutual trauma, them working together, and the discussions and conversations that they had felt so realistic and logical. It did not feel, I know I keep saying this, but the rah girl power corporate feminism that's being forced into every piece of media right now. I'm not trying to say that every piece of media is doing this just for corporate greed, or that there aren't pieces of media out there right now that represent femininity and feminism and girl power correctly, but there's just so many half-hearted, and the only way I know how to explain it is the rah girl power saying, but that kind of mentality just is forced into so many pieces of media, and it doesn't feel realistic or logical, and it feels hollow. And this book is not like that. It feels full. It feels based on something. It is inspiring. It is empowering. It feels real. It feels like an actual group of, of girls that would be at a school, and I don't know how else to explain it, but it just is good. It's good. I really like how exaggerated the story got. I know that's not everyone's cup of tea. I know other people would have been like, that escalated quickly and that's unrealistic. I think it was escalated quickly for a reason, and I like those kind of stories that escalate really fast, but I understand that's not for everyone. Oh my gosh, the twists. I don't know if it's just because I purposely read a lot of bad books, but I have not seen foreshadowing done in such a good way in a long time. This book had twists that were surprising, but didn't come out of nowhere. And so many of the twists or like the reveals happened, and I went back and I found the clues. And I was like, oh my gosh, you actually set that up. There were setups, there were payoffs. That was so well done. I mean, like I said, I read a lot of bad books, and so this is run-of-the-mill foreshadowing and twist reveals, but they were done so well, and I'm just easily impressed. Also, the book does red herrings really well. Like, there is a red herring that's done so correctly, and it's so good, and I loved it. The structure of this book and the writing style, not my favorite, but the techniques of this book could teach a class on plot twists. Oh my gosh. If you don't want any of the twists revealed, I'm going to talk about one right now. So bear that in mind. One of the twists is that a teacher is having a sexual relationship with one of the students. Once this is revealed, they do talk on the cycle of abuse. They talk about how that teacher had been sexually abused by a teacher when they were a student at the school, and so that is why they are having these sexual relationships with students now. I don't know enough about the cycle of abuse to really talk on that, but I do like that they at least touched on it and said that it is a cycle. You know, students that experience this grow up usually. They usually grow up to also hurt other people in their life in other ways. It doesn't have to be sexual abuse, but they can continue to hurt other people, and that's why it's a cycle of abuse. And I do like that they touched on that, although I'm not educated enough to make a statement on it. I will say one of my gripes with this book is that when the teacher-student relationships are talked about, they act as if both parties are in the wrong and that it's just this scandalous taboo thing that's going on, and not that the teacher is a predator. And in my opinion, you should call a spade a spade. The word pedophilia is never used in this book, and yet these teachers are pedophiles. I just wonder why the word was never used when we're talking about the cycle of abuse and the harm that is caused on these children because of this inappropriate relationship with an adult. It really wasn't as if the author was blaming the student, but it was as if the student and the teacher had the same amount of power in the relationship, and that is just never correct. There is never a way in which the child has the same amount of power as an adult in these kind of relationships. The student and the person of authority are never going to be on the same level, and so I really wish that the book had actually just called it pedophilia instead of just a scandalous taboo thing. So in conclusion, I think that this book deserved a couple more drafts. I feel like this book definitely could have been 50 to 100 pages shorter. It is 399 pages exactly. I feel like there are some scenes that could have been written out or condensed. We definitely could have gotten more efficient with the writing style. There are a lot of scenes that are just redundant. Aside from the structure of the book, I feel like this is a well-written book. I feel like the ideas and the nuanced debates and discussions that are seen in this book are well worth the read. It talked about things that I hadn't even thought about, and I've been in feminist discussions about rape culture for basically my entire life or my entire adolescence. I was very interested in this book, and I am excited to read more from this author, and I think she can only grow from here. I think just a few more rough drafts, just a few more drafts, and get an editor that will be really strict. That is my advice for this author, except she doesn't need my advice. Now, do I think this book is worth $1? I would actually pay $10 to $15 for this book. I definitely would have. Like I said, I think the discussions, the thoughts and opinions in this book are important, and I'm glad I read them. I'm glad I read this book. Now, if I had paid full price for this hardback book, which is like $30, I think, because I paid so much money, I might have been more disappointed with this book. But for $1, it's great. So if you see this in your local Dollar Tree or your bargain bookstore or whatever, pick it up. I think it's worth the read. I mean, I was pleasantly surprised by this book. Alrighty, that was my review of The Swallows by Lisa Lutz. Lutz? I don't know. Have you read The Swallows or any of her other books? If you like this video, subscribe for more videos like this, and I guess I will see you on the next one. Okay, bye! No, I know where you are. You get back. Where are you? Are you behind me? Where did you go? I just saw your tail.